Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Age Group Triathlon Podcast. My name is Simon, and I'm joined this week by Robbie Venture, who is a ex-professional cyclist, rode the Tour de France, where we're going to be discussing everything relating to indoor cycling, all the way from why somebody would want to even sort of consider indoor cycling in the first place, all the way up to some relatively sort of advanced tips for how to make the most out of your indoor training sessions. Now, we do go off topic a little bit for the first 10 minutes before we really get into the subject of indoor cycling. Now, I think it's a really interesting conversation for many of you, so I've left it in. However, if you just want to fast forward straight into the bit about indoor cycling, if you fast forward to around about the 10 minutes and 30-second mark, you should be able to pick up right there. Hey Robbie, welcome to the Age Group Triathlon Podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing good. It's really, really cold here in Chicago. I think it's like 4 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a
Ooh,
tough
ooh,
weather setup here. And the crazy thing about it is we have a big training camp in Fredericksburg, Texas coming up.
yeah.
We're leaving on Sunday, which is 2 days from now.
Mm.
And it's always beautiful in Fredericksburg. I don't know if you've ever been there, Fredericksburg,
No, I haven't.
Texas, in the States, but it's going to be 17 degrees Fahrenheit for some of our camps. So it's got a little bit of a bummer in terms of what the weather's doing here in the United States, but we'll make the best of it. That's for sure. We
I
always
mean,
do.
it's 3 degrees Celsius over here, and I'm feeling pretty cold. But I think the humidity here is just a little bit different in the UK. It's a different kind of cold. You
Yeah.
can't bundle up. You can't it's difficult to keep it out. Um, so yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm just a father of four. And I was a former professional cyclist, but I my first love is hockey. I'm a
Oh yeah,
big hockey fan. I played college hockey and just loved it. And yeah, I just had some cycling success. I was very lucky to have a velodrome close to my house. I got a lot of experience. Did a couple triathlons, and started a coaching business about 25 years ago that has just been very rewarding, a lot of fun. And we're constantly trying to push the envelope in terms of technology, athlete and coach interaction. I'm a big supporter of coaching.
mm,
I really needed a lot of coaching as when I was going through my kind of career. My dad was one of the greatest coaches that's ever walked the earth. I think if he ever wanted to be, he could have been the greatest of all time. His thoughts 30, 40 years ago were what we're getting to now today, which I think
yeah,
is amazing. But I really believe that coaches play a vital role in athletes' success, and not just to make them better athletes, but ultimately enjoy the process a lot more and to make less mistakes and to have somebody to go through the journey with. I always believe that doing something by yourself is rewarding. Doing it with somebody else and other people just brings it to a whole new level. So big supporter of coaching. Been always coached my whole life. Had some great coaches and influencers, and just hope that I can learn from them and deliver what I've been given to others.
I think that's one of the big misconceptions with coaching is that people think about a sports coach as being somebody who stands on the side of a pitch with a whistle or a track and spark splits at them, and then you go home at the end of the session. And sure, like I have like had some coaching sessions where that's been how it works. But when you talk like if you really want to unlock somebody's performance, if you want somebody to go on a performance journey rather than just it being an isolated session every Tuesday night, we're going to do 400-meter reps. If you actually have somebody who's taking an athlete under their wing, developing them, involving their enjoyment and the understanding of the sport, rather than just battering them with tough sessions, that's a very different kind of coaching.
Yeah, I think, everybody responds, as you know, Simon, differently to different things, right? And the good coaches are the ones that could really understand when the athlete needs a kick in the butt, when
Mm,
they need a pat on the back, when they need to be taught something, and when they need to just show up, right? And I think those are all things that are important at different times of the year and different times of the process. But I
yeah,
think these coaches need to have the tools to do all of it, right? You
yeah,
just can't holler at your athletes. I mean, you might have, because what you end up with, Simon, at the end of the day, is a bunch of athletes that only respond to the way you're coaching. And unfortunately, as a coach, that pool starts to get real small, right? And I think as coaches, we need to open up our toolboxes a little bit to give ourselves the opportunity to be more successful. And
mm,
that involves doing things that are a little bit different for all the athletes
Yeah.
that you work with, but some things that are all the same, right? So I know it sounds, contradictive to some degree, but I think it's that nuance and that understanding that I think makes good coaches great.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's my understanding of good coaching has changed dramatically in the last 9 years. I started off, I thought I'm going to set people to all these really complex sessions, and I'm going to be really, and that's where I thought the value was in good coaching. But that's kind of it's been flipped on its head a little bit for me at least. So
Simon, you know what? You couldn't have said that better. Like, I think the more you've been involved with athletes, the more experiences you have, the more athletes that you coach, you understand that the simplest solutions are the best ones.
yeah,
Occam's razor, right?
yep,
Try to take some of the craziness and some of the complications out and really get down to what sort of intensity is best,
mm,
what sort of volume do these athletes need, and how to
yeah,
get them there comfortably without overcooking them, right? And I think
yep,
at the end of the day, it's more about that personal engagement than it
mm,
is about the exact length of the interval or the exact percentage of
yes,
FTP you
yep,
should dial that. Like I think
yeah.
those things become less important in the bigger picture and communicating that bigger picture to the athlete so they can adjust things based on how they feel is really what ultimately allows for them to optimize performance.
Yeah, it's, you start to, I mean, you start to realize that sometimes all athletes do want is just an hour steady state. You don't need to always mix it up. Sometimes they just want to listen to an audiobook or watch a movie or they want to do something. Yes, there is a time for doing stuff that's a bit more focused, but sometimes they just want to chill. They just want that part of their day to be like a meditative experience. And it doesn't always have to be intense. Look at all this information that I'm throwing at you because we get enough information in our day-to-day lives, don't we?
Yep, I agree, and I think that's where you are a great coach is you realize that in that athletes need a variety of work for sure, but
Mm.
ultimately you also want to keep some consistency so you can compare work or similar work to see how they're progressing.
Yeah.
And keeping an eye on you know their metrics to some degree, but also
Mm.
teaching them, really, really spending time teaching them how to adjust and how to manage and how to feel if something is too much or too little,
Yeah.
and to really understand if they're growing or they're not. Because we can be the greatest coaches of all time. We can have more data and Oura Ring data and recovery data and all
Hmm.
this other stuff. The athlete needs to take responsibility for when they feel they've had enough and communicate that to us because we just can't possibly understand all the other elements in their lives. We can try, but
No.
there's no way we'll get there. It's more about educating them and then having this relationship where you work together rather than me to you, right? In the
Yep.
beginning, it's a little bit more me to you, but at after a while, when they're educated, then it's us kind of taking the
Yeah.
journey, which is an evolution of the process.
And that's scary for some athletes, I think. The idea of because they think, well, I want a coach to tell me what to do. And a kind of coach, well, okay, I think we should do this. How do you feel about that? Is there anything you'd like to focus on? How are you feeling after that workout? And that can throw them. They go, no, I want the answers. No, there isn't an answer. There isn't a perfect training plan. There is a conversation. It's about communication. It's about me understanding where you are. If you feel like you're cruising, okay, let's turn up the volume a little bit. Let's try and push you a little out of your comfort zone. If it's an appropriate time of year, all of that. If you are feeling burned out, I'm not going to be disappointed if you miss that workout. I'd rather you drop me a message and say, I'm exhausted. I couldn't do that. I need a recovery week. And we go, great, let's do a recovery week then, because that's what coaching is.
Sounds simple. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But
Yeah.
the hardest part for an athlete is to actually pay attention.
Yeah.
Like the you can only get so good if you do. Simon, you could be the best coach ever and know the athlete really, really good and have the greatest training plans and all the technology. Your athlete's only going to get so good unless they start taking responsibility to pay attention to
Mm,
what's working and what isn't, how
yeah.
they feel when they're good and when they're bad, what
Yeah.
what they ate and how they felt afterwards. Like that's the hard part. Coach can't give you that. It can run experiments to allow you to compare things and feel what's better or worse, but what they can't do is pay attention to exactly how they're being affected by given workouts, given nutrition, given sleep patterns,
Yep.
given a training, an overall race plan. Like it really has to come from the athlete. And I've seen athletes a lot that just depend on what I tell them and they get pretty good. But if you want to get great, you better be a big part of the equation in terms of paying attention.
Yeah. And a wise man once says that hiring a coach won't make you faster, listening to one will.
And listening to yourself. That's the
Yeah.
that's the
No,
addendum,
of
right?
course.
Listen
Yes.
to the
Yeah.
coach. Yeah. Listen to
Engaging with the
yourself.
coach, I should say,
Yep.
rather than listening to the coach. But yeah, if you actually engage with me, there's nothing worse than an athlete who just stonewalls me for a week, and I think, like, what's going on? But hey,
Yeah.
we're here to talk about turbo training or
Okay.
indoor training.
Wow. We went off there for a little bit. Is that
I
okay?
know, but I
Do we
loved it.
have to stop
So,
that?
um, yeah. So, yeah, talking about sort of turbo training, indoor training. For those who aren't aware, it's when somebody will take their bike. Generally, these days, they'll remove their rear wheel. They'll stick it onto a turbo trainer, or they might have a special indoor bike that they ride, and they're able to ride their bike indoors. Now, this may seem really unappealing to a lot of people at first because they start to ride their bikes because they enjoy being outdoors. They go on a family bike ride. They enjoying the scenery and that. So, Robbie, what are the reasons somebody might want to take their riding indoors? I mean, the temperature in Chicago at the moment is one reason, but
Yeah, I mean that's a big one. That's a big one. For us in Chicago, you just simply can't ride outside,
Hmm,
like at least 3 or 4 months out of the year. Um, and you might be able to slip into it if the weather breaks for a second, but it's not just about the weather breaking, Simon, here. It's ice on the roads. It's
yeah,
simply dangerous. It's not about managing the cold. We have all kinds of clothing and all kinds of battery packs and stuff that we can use. Um, but at the end of the day, it's not safe. It's not safe for a couple of reasons.
hmm,
One, there's ice on the road and you can fall and hurt yourself. And everybody from Chicago has hit black ice at one point and did some damage to themselves or their
yeah,
bike. The second thing is if you have a flat tire or you're caught somewhere and something breaks on your bicycle and you have to sit in the cold
hmm,
and wait for somebody to come get you, I mean, it's nasty. You could freeze very easily in a situation. So it's just not safe, I don't think, to ride consistently in temperatures under
hmm,
20 degrees Fahrenheit. So we don't do it. We have a coaching business here in Chicago and we have an outdoor ride program and we simply just cancel the rides at 20
yeah,
degrees. Most people don't even show up if it's unless it's warmer than 30.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that's right around 0 Celsius for you. So that's kind of like our tipping point, so to
yeah.
say.
Very wise.
Um, but there are other reasons too. As a former professional cyclist, um, I trained in really cold temperatures just because I had to get my volume in.
Hmm,
But there's other reasons to train inside besides just becoming cold. I mean, there's people in warm temperatures that train indoors
yes, yeah,
because of the advantage of controlling the elements, right? It's really about control more than it is anything else. And outside, you have stoplights, you have uphills, you have downhills, you have turns and whatever that can interrupt efforts, that can change the effort just to manage it. You have crosswinds and headwinds and tailwinds that you have to manage. And let me tell you, if you have the ability to train in those environments, it's always going to be better because that's what you race in, right? So you have
yeah,
to get used to those different things. So I think from a specificity perspective, nothing beats actually being outside. But let's say you're racing in mountainous terrain, right? And you live in Chicago. We can't mimic mountainous terrain in Chicago.
hmm,
We can try by putting it in a big gear, but you just really can't get the feel of
yeah,
climbing up a mountain outside when you have flat roads.
yep,
So there's opportunities inside to control the elements in the environment to optimize the specificity of a
yeah,
given race. But outside of that, if you really want to control the variables around the energy systems, you can do that as well. You can
hmm,
really create repeatable efforts that you can compare week to week to week to do exactly what I said earlier on, to give yourself reference points to figure out what's working and what isn't, where you're strong or where you're weak. And sometimes outside, because of the changing variables, it's a little bit more difficult to do that. So from a specificity perspective, as well as an energy system development perspective, you can be way more precise and prescriptive indoors because you can control all the elements than you can outside. And
yep,
that's a big reason why people are training indoors and why I think the statistics for anybody racing or doing bigger events, 80% of them train indoors at some point during the year.
Mm. Yeah, and I think there's also a safety aspect if you are trying to be focused with your energy systems. I'm very lucky in that near me there's a piece of road that they run 10-mile time trials on. And it's about like 3 laps of this road. So each bit is about 3 miles in length, this bit of road, and there's very little cars that go along it, which is great. So I'll sometimes in the warmer months I'll go out and I will ride intervals on that piece of road because of what you say, specificity. But if there were lots of cars around, I can't afford to be looking at my computer every 20 seconds to see if I'm still on target. And when I get to those roundabouts at the end of the road and I pull a U-turn, sometimes when I've got legs full of lactic acid, I don't always make the best decisions when it comes to seeing if there's a car that I should give way to. So, it's safer. Yes, you can do them outside sometimes if you're lucky enough to have a piece of road like that, where that would be beneficial. But a lot of the time, it's safer to be able to do these big efforts inside, like you say, more controlled as well. And it is really popular with triathletes. A lot of road cyclists, they'll prefer to get out in all weathers because they want to get out. And sort of some guys like rode past me the day when it was like -3. They cycled past me. It's like, guys, have you ever heard of a turbo trainer? I didn't say it. I just thought it. But a lot of triathletes, they're quite quick to hop on the turbo once the weather gets cold, and they also ride the turbo in season a lot more than your average road cyclist will. So, why do you think it is that turbo training is as popular as it is with triathletes relative to road cyclists?
Well, what one thing I think is it's hyper convenient, right? If you think about getting on a turbo trainer, we call them smart trainers,
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
indoor
whatever.
trainers. I love turbo trainers because when I was a junior, we used to call them turbo trainers because they had these little flywheels and they look like turbines.
Uh,
Um,
yeah,
but basically, think about how easy this is. Let's just say you're a triathlete and you work from 8 o'clock in the morning to like 5 p.m. at night. And certain times of the year, it's dark before 8 o'clock and after 5.
yeah,
So if you're a triathlete, you can hop on your trainer at 6 a.m., get 2 hours in before work, hop on your trainer at 5 p.m., get an hour in after work, never have to deal with traffic and never have to deal with the dark
yeah,
because that is your window. And the train in that window, you either have to go out in the dark and cold or get on your turbo. You can get on your turbo trainer. I'm just going to keep calling it that because of you and hop on and get a couple of hours in early. It's
yeah,
so easy. You
yeah,
can shower, do 2 hours, shower, get to work. You don't have to put on all your cycling gear. You don't have to get your
yeah,
bike. I mean, there's a lot of savings by hopping onto a turbo trainer and going. The other element is, I think, I think triathletes, you know, they're they're a little bit more. We coach triathletes and we coach cyclists.
mm,
Triathletes are a little more anal around the exact prescription of a workout. They
yeah,
also don't need this huge element of being social. They don't know about the huge element of being social because a lot of stuff that they do is on their own.
mm,
So it doesn't mean as much to go out on group rides for a triathlete. This and now I'm making general statements. Some of them are completely
of
different
course.
and love group rides and there's huge value for them. But I would say they're a little bit more focused on what they need to do at that given time. And the turbo trainer allows you to be hyper specific to a training workout. You can get the exact power, the exact heart rate, hold it for the exact amount of time. Impossible to do outside because of all the elements that there are. But I think from a triathlete's perspective, they just love that I'm doing exactly what my coach wants me to do. I'm doing exactly what this plan I bought wants me to do, and I don't have anything to worry about. I can check that box.
Yeah,
And I think that there's some good and some bad in that, but I think ultimately they need to train a little bit more than others. So they need to make an environment where they can train, even if it's dark or cold or before or after work, and the
yeah.
trainer allows them to do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if you get your trainer set up the night before, make sure it's all ready to go. Your laptop, computer plugged in, so the alarm goes off. You peel yourself out of bed, stick a pair of shorts and a heart rate monitor on, and you can jump on that turbo train. You
So,
can start your workout. You're not having to decide what you're going to layer up. Where's that piece of equipment? Check your tire pressures, see what the road conditions are like. It's so fast. And if you have 2 workouts in a day, or you're going to follow that turbo session with a run, then again, it's that time convenience piece. And as well, I think a lot of triathletes, they're just data nerds, and they love to see the power metrics. They want to feel that they are hitting those intervals. And as we said in that little chat before we started the main conversation about coaching, maybe getting hyper specific about the intervals isn't as important maybe as they think it is, but it brings them like a sense of sort of accomplishment to be able to nail this workout. And
100%.
to be able to tick that box and go, right, that's done, on to the next one. So obviously there's a huge amount of benefit in turbo training, or one of them is the ability for anybody with a training they've bought probably in recent years to measure cycling power. Now, when you're just out on the roads, if you don't have a power meter, then you're just working with heart rate. Which, somebody once said it's the dial-up internet of cycling metrics. It's a little bit clunky. It's a little bit slow to react. It's not useless, but it's not the modern way to do it. So if you just talk us a little bit through about what cycling power is and why it's such a valuable training tool, why we train to power these days.
Yeah, I think power is this objective measurement. I liken it to weight if you're trying to get a higher bench press, right?
Mm.
Like, power is the thing that we can completely control and dose perfectly and add weight slowly and controlled and measure if we can do the bench press, right?
Yeah.
Imagine being out in the wilderness and picking up rocks every day. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Just bigger rocks, and you're trying to pick up a bigger rock every day to get a little stronger. It would work, but it wouldn't work as well as if you had a rock that weighed 1 pound more, and you can really control the amount of weight
Yep.
that you're. So that's what really power does, is it adds a measurement to the work, right? And I think it's an objective measurement that you can dose perfectly. So I think ultimately it responds incredibly fast, faster than heart rate, but you can also measure growth really easily. You're either doing more or less power at an all out effort, right? So if you're
Yeah.
doing a 2 minute effort and you can do 250 watts and next week you can do 270, you've made 20 watts of improvement, right? Which
Yep.
is super reassuring, right? You feel a little pat on the back every time you see that. But to go back to heart rate, you don't have to do all out efforts either to measure power. You
Mm.
can look at your power to heart rate, numbers and figure out if you're getting stronger even at lower intensity levels, which I
Yep.
think is really important for triathletes because anytime you do an all out effort, there's a major cost to it, right? So you don't want to just measure your gains by how well you do for your power curve for your all out efforts because you're going to be tired all the time and you're not going to be able to train as much because you're going to be fatigued from going all out.
Hmm.
But you can see that power to heart rate measurement, right? I think it's called efficiency factor if you use Training Peaks,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's really how well and how those things compare to one another over certain durations really makes you, figures out and helps you understand. Remember, I talked about that feel stuff earlier? It really
Yeah.
helps confirm if you're feeling better, if the training is working. And I think the last thing it does is it really allows us to understand how much fuel we're using and burning and how much fuel we need to replace. So it
Yeah.
does a really nice job of giving us concrete measurements of dose. It also does a really good job of telling us how many calories we're burning, thus needing to be replaced. So it really is the gold standard for cycling. But I think with heart rate, with perceived exertion, because you need to know how something feels. I mean, if
Yeah.
Simon, if you're going out there and riding at 200 watts and you feel great, right? Good. And let's just say your threshold is 300 watts. If you go out there and ride at 200 watts and you feel like crap, you might be tired. So you really need to understand your perceived exertion relative to your power output.
Yep.
And that really tells the story. Power by itself, heart rate by itself, perceived exertion by itself. It's the combination of these elements that really help you learn, right? How stuff is affecting you. And that's what I said earlier on. These are just tools to help you dial in what's working and what isn't.
Yeah. I did when I did my first Ironman. I took the bus on the train, and my power meter kept waking up on the train with the movement. Thought I'll put it into sleep mode, so I put the power meter into sleep mode. Got to the race. Okay, how do I wake up from sleep mode? Plug in the charger. Oh, Nobody I could find had a charger, so I did the first race without the power meter. It was great for training, for getting me stronger, but it's that relationship between to be able to identify, you know what, this feels like 150 watts. This feels like my race pace. And that's the kind of decisions that you need athletes to be making on race day rather than just being beholden to a single number. And yeah,
Yep.
it's a trifecta: power, RPE, heart rate. If you use all of those three together, that's how you're going to make sure that you have a great race and a great run, rather than blindly
Yep.
following a power target that may come to bite you by the end of the run. So, yeah, obviously we touched on what's great about cycling, indoor cycling. What are the limitations of sort of your classic indoor training program?
Yeah, indoor cycling can help build power output really well. And I think it can control the elements. And I think there's probably no better way to build your VO2 max or your threshold than doing specific intervals indoors. What it doesn't do is provide you the opportunity to learn about skill development. It
Yeah.
doesn't allow you to work on things that make people fast. And at some point, your power output is simply just not going to keep going up. But it's not that you're done improving, right? I think there's so many more levers to pull to make an athlete a really good racer or get them faster than just power output. There is how they shift their bicycle, their pedaling technique, their aerodynamics, their terrain management, their pacing strategies, their ability to use tactic and when to use power and when not to based on how fast you're going. There's all these elements around speed that are can be optimized outside of just power gains. And those are tough to work on indoors. I mean, there are some tools out there that allow you to work on those better, but getting outside, getting on your bicycle and practicing in the position on the bicycle with terrain, with different cadence changes, with a strategy, that's really how you kind of put the finishing touches on an athlete's training. And I think people at different phases, those things become a lot more important, especially once they've gotten through the first piece of it, right? And then we all know that time is a huge element. You just have to do aerobic work year after year after year to slowly increase that aerobic capacity. While all these things about skill development can happen quickly, you can teach
Mm.
them on a regular basis and really make a big gain where aerobic training might take you 5 or 6 years to optimize. You can optimize skills in just a couple. Obviously, there's levels to that as well, but you need tools to help you do that if you're going to train indoors.
Yeah. So I've found some of the athletes I've worked with over the years, you've had to kind of crowbar them off of the indoor trainer because that's their comfort zone, and you get them out and you sort of get them outside. And sometimes they can have things like simple mechanicals that they just can't deal with, and it's like, okay, so you got this great aerobic engine, you really fit, but can you actually ride a bike? Can you hold the aero position for the duration of your Ironman? Can you troubleshoot things when they happen? Are you able to go downhill effectively, or you set up like a sail, losing loads of time?
Yeah,
And
some people can't even climb out of their seat. They can't shift from the big ring to the small ring. They just haven't learned how to do that effectively. And something that'll screw up a race is you shift to the small ring on a steep hill, it goes down into your frame, it locks up in there, you can't get the chain out, you're done.
yeah, yeah.
Like, you know how many people that happens to, or they throw it off on the outside, or they don't just there. That's a skill. Shifting your bike effectively and accurately and precisely in a timely manner, you have to learn that. You
Mm.
can get really powerful and have no skills at all and be a complete wreck out there, especially on a course with some terrain.
Yeah, I think triathletes are especially guilty of that, become hermits on their turbo trainers, and they see their FTP go up, they see their aerobic fitness go, which is great. They're getting fitter, and at the end of the day, we're doing sports. We want this healthy lifestyle, but they still want to have a great race. They don't want to be there at the side of the road grappling with a chain, trying to get it removed from, between between their sort of bottom bracket and their chain set because it's wedged itself in there because they didn't understand sort of how to shift properly. So I think you have to have both in every in every training plan. Unless somebody's only ever going to be doing online events, you really do need to have a mix of both, and that mix is going to depend different times of the year. But there's no time. While I think that I used to ride outside in the winter. I thought it made me really hard, and then I had a couple of crashes, and now look back and I go, no, it's just stupid. Like, you're not actually, you can't get a good workout in. It's dangerous. You're putting too much at risk. So, no, in the winter, you just have to go indoors if it's cold enough. In the summer, I never really tell athletes, look, pack away the turbo trainer. It's time to ride outside all the time because of that convenience, the control, and everything sort of that comes with it. Um, so, one of the downsides of turbo training is that people are sat in the garage on their own, staring at a bike computer or staring at an app that's having them ride through a virtual world, or maybe even staring at a wall. Like, it can be boring, it can be isolating. So, how can athletes, what are the options and tools available to athletes to alleviate that boredom, to gain more of a sense of community?
Yeah, I think, over the last 10 years, we've seen a big improvement in the indoor riding experience. When I was a professional, um, way back when in the late 90s,
Mm,
I had I used a CompuTrainer with this very rote software. Sometimes I just used the head unit and just looked at my power on the CompuTrainer, and I watched a movie while I was doing a workout, and that was it. That was about the extent of it. Things have evolved considerably since then. There is the ability to ride with a bunch of people in these virtual worlds, like you talked about. Swift is one of them. Now they have Training Peaks Virtual, which is another training world you can go into. There is this My Whoosh is another training
yep.
world that you can go in. They have real live course rides like on Ruby where you can actually they have a camera. Someone went out with a car and basically film the whole ride or triathlon that you're going to do. And you can actually ride the roads and pick
Mm,
out markers on the road and really feel what the gradients are like. They have now integrated Bluetooth. So now you can control the terrain and create terrain that athletes can ride up and over and feel what that's like and have to shift their bicycles. So it's become so much better in the last 10 years, the experience. I mean, it's not nearly as boring as it used to be. And they've tried to create these worlds where a lot of people can ride together as well, which I think has been terrific. It's changed the indoor riding landscape for sure. We developed a product called Velocity, which I think is kind of sits in its own little space. It's
mm,
not a virtual world, but it's really a product where one of the big goals is to teach athletes some of those skills that we talked about earlier, some of those skills that are difficult and that you can't learn on these other platforms that are out there, and you really can't learn it even on the road to some degree.
mm,
The aerodynamic component, the shifting component that I talked about, you can create because the virtual worlds are great, and these other things are nice, but the climbs come when they come, and you can't repeat a climb once, twice, three, four, or five times to work on a specific skill.
mm,
Our platform allows athletes and coaches to build workouts where you can work on consistent terrain based intervals where you can practice that transition from going up and then going down and the importance of kicking it over the top of a hill and feeling what that's like to let off on the gas a little bit because there are so many skills that a coach could teach if it had the ability to create the environment that the athlete's gonna that the skill requires. Shifting, for example, being arrow, for example, keeping yourself quiet, for example. And if you have the opportunity to actually see the athletes while they're doing these skills, you can really kind of do the same thing you would be able to do if you had a velodrome and watched an athlete go around the track.
yeah.
I was very fortunate to learn a lot about the skill of cycling because I grew up with two velodromes within like 10 miles of my house. And when you can watch riders, my dad could watch me, my coach could see me, he could correct my position quickly. He could tell me what I did wrong quickly. He could see what's going on and watch the race form and really teach me tactic. So for me personally, I was very fortunate to get a lot of reps with the ability for my dad, my coach, to see me do those reps and adjust my position, look at different things that I did wrong, watch my tactic, watch my strategy, and quickly tell me what I did right and what I did wrong. So I became a student of tactic. I became a
Mm.
student of position. And that's why I can teach it so well, because I had the ability to without, virtual, right? You can't, that's impossible to do for your athletes. Like, even if you're a
Mm.
coach and you can see your athlete on a regular basis, once he leaves, he's gone. He's doing his stuff on his own. But the ability to watch and see your athlete and coach them real time, there's nothing else out there that can do that. So I wanted to create something for the coaches so they can do their job at the highest level possible. So we created this platform which allows coaches to see their athlete, number one. Number two, create workouts where they can work on specific skills, whether that's terrain management, whether that's pacing strategy, whether that's doing things blind, whether that's working on
Mm.
their aerodynamics and their movement, but also giving them the opportunity to make sure that they're complying with the output and the cadence as well, and really giving them real-time feedback from everybody in their class. So I had so much success with creating studios to do that, and COVID wiped out that ability to do that, and it was inconvenient, and I couldn't work with people that weren't close to me.
Mm.
That this product allowed me to create this studio environment for every coach out there without the cost, without the stress,
Yeah.
without the parking, without the overhead, without any of that stuff. And it allowed athletes to do it right from their home instantaneously. So I don't want this to be any sort of a sales job or anything like that. I just
Mm.
really want athletes and coaches to know that this product is available, and it's really it's a game changer for those that use it.
So how is it, if we look at a sort of a triathlete who may be perfectly powerful on the bike, but they may, if they are just doing indoor training solo, that's not going to help. What features are there in the software that's really going to fast track their development as a triathlete? Which bits do you think are the most valuable to help athletes get just like a lot more efficiency out of the sessions that it is that they're doing?
One thing I will tell you about triathletes is they think that a steady state power output for the duration of a triathlon is effective. And for some, especially people just starting off with, it is the best way to do a triathlon, especially if there's not a lot of terrain on the course or a lot of wind.
Hmm.
So, first and foremost, teaching riders to keep power steady is a skill in itself.
Yeah.
And you can do that by creating a power band or a power window in the beginning that's fairly wide that everybody can stay inside. And then over time, if you shrink that window, you have to pedal smoother and smoother to keep power inside of that window, thus making them more efficient, burning less matches. Because I'll tell you this, if you can hold 200 watts within a 15-watt window, you do a lot less damage than holding 200 watts within a 60-watt window where you're accelerating and trying to keep your average, but you're all over the board. You just can't hold power steady.
Yeah.
So teaching athletes that simple skill, believe it or not, a lot of them don't have that skill. They just ride and their power's all over the place and they're burning little matches. They don't even realize it, is skill number one. Once you can teach them to really control their output, then once you throw hills into the equation, everything goes sideways again, right?
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you got to keep power steady, but you're going up and you're going down. You're going up and you're going down. And that's not easy to do, even for more advanced triathletes. So teaching them to do that by scoring them and giving them a pat on the back every time they can adjust to rate changing terrain is the next level of power control. Now you throw in keeping cadence consistent while you're doing all of that. Now, all of a sudden, you're teaching them to keep power steady, keep cadence steady, regardless of terrain. Now you're really helping them optimize speed over a given period, and they have to use their gears to do so, and really giving them that fine tuning of that, and then predicting what's coming. Right? They know a hill is coming, they know a turn is coming. They can start to set their gears up beforehand so they can make these beautiful transitions. This is just one element of trying to teach someone to optimize their performance without changing necessarily their power output. Then you layer on top of that the importance of aerodynamics and measuring aerodynamics while they're doing these different efforts, right? controlling and keeping power output's one thing, but trying to do it in the most aerodynamic position you can be in is a whole nother set of skills that requires energy. And I think once you start refining and defining that, then sometimes different strategies optimize speed on different types of terrain, right? So this is getting a little deep, but when you're going up a hill in triathlon and it's a fairly steep hill, you want to increase power output. And the reason why you want to increase power output is because your speed is down. So all the power that you're actually putting into the pedals is propelling you to go faster. Conversely, when you're going downhill, you want to let off on the power a little bit. And the reason why is not what you think. When your speed is up, all of your extra power goes towards defeating aerodynamics and wind resistance. If you let off a little bit on your power and recover a little bit, it's okay, because any extra power that you add at that point, very little of it goes to make you going faster, and all of it goes to defeating this resistance called drag. So messing around with that a little bit, playing with pacing strategies based on terrain, this is next level stuff that will really help triathletes understand. Now, you can't go too hard up the hill because the cost is too great. Again, something we can measure with W prime. So there is this fine line between teaching these skills, and the best coaches like you, Simon, will be able to not only have these athletes do these things, but tell them the reasons why and the potential cost and the potential benefit. Yeah. Even your hand positions, for that matter. When you come to the bullhorns, why it makes sense and what's the benefit of that. How you get out of the seat, the cost of being out of the seat and sitting down, when it makes sense and when it doesn't. These are all things there's no way you could teach if you send out an athlete on a ride by themselves or even send them out on Zwift. But if I have you in front of me, Simon, and I'm watching you do these things and I'm telling you what to think about and why you're doing what you're doing, all of a sudden, the meaning of that workout goes from a normal workout that you would do on your own to something that's a mind blow, that teaches somebody something that you can repeat interval after interval and eventually have them get it. Because nobody learns the first time they hear anything. But to be able to hear things while you're doing it, when you're captive, it's a next level of instruction and growth for the athlete. And any athlete that does these classes will understand why that is so valuable.
Yeah, I think everybody, when they take a power meter outside for the first time, is shocked by how hard that power is to keep steady. They didn't realise just how many matches they're burning. Even going over a small hill, there's a part that thinks, "Oh, I just stay in this gear and I keep going over this hill." And they look down, they see they're doing double their FTP because they don't understand the cost of these mistakes that they're making when they're out riding. So yeah, having that, teaching that skill, teaching people to ride within a reduced band over different pieces of terrain, that is how you have a good run. Especially over those longer distance triathlons, over 70.3 over Ironman, you have a good run by putting out the least amount of power that you can on the bike to be able to have an efficient bike load to put in the kind of split that you're looking for, not by putting out getting the highest average power, because average power doesn't always equal average speed.
Yeah, I think part of my goal as a coach and all the coaches that we work with, our goal is to have the fastest split at the lowest power output.
Yeah.
And to beat and finish faster than people that have higher power to weight ratios, have higher power outputs. And really, to me, that is the mark of a good coach. It's the athlete performs over their weight class, not at or below, right? Like the big, strong, powerful, even whatever athletes that can't get it done, they don't use this platform. I'm hoping that anybody that uses velocity punches above their weight class because they really have understood the elements of speed, right? They really understand the elements of performance. And obviously we want them to get powerful, right? But that's easy. Honestly, getting people more powerful is easy for the first part of it, right? Once they get really good, that last 3 or 4% is real tough. You got to kind of risk overtraining them. And there's a bunch of other things that are involved in that. Most people don't get there, at least in the first 4 or 5 years. But really having the athletes that we work with, Simon, outperform their power numbers is our goal.
Yeah, no, triathlon, it's all about speed at the end of the day. In training, it's great to look at power numbers and see this. When it comes to race day, you want to go as fast as you can. That is
Yep.
what it comes down to, and still be able to have a great run at the end of it. And that's where those skills come in. So obviously, when a coach is using the velocity platform, they then have the video screen. Hopefully, the athletes got their cameras on so that the coach can see them riding and can see the video. How is it that a coach can use that video? What kind of feedback can a coach give to an athlete that they see riding? How can they best utilize that video feed and seeing all
We
of their
talk a
stats
lot.
while they're riding as well?
Yeah, yeah. So the nice thing about the coach's screen, it's different than the athlete screen. The coach sees everybody in the class, right? And they see their a couple of metrics. They see their body, right? And their body position, their hand position, their aerodynamics, all that stuff. But they also see their percentage of FTP, they
Hmm.
see their heart rate, and they see their cadence. And those are valuable metrics when you're coaching somebody. The more you know about that athlete, obviously, the better. But what's also very interesting, I mean, so to answer your question, you talked early on about a coach yelling out the splits on the side of the road, right?
Mm.
The runner comes by, you're doing great, you're up two, you're down two, whatever. That's part of it. Imagine being able to do that for everybody in the class.
Mm.
People that are above, right away, you can see that they're going a little bit too hard because their box is red, and you can call them out quickly. The people that are a little bit below, their box is blue, you can call them out quickly and motivate them. If they're
Yeah.
not even close, you know they're either taking the interval off or they're kind of like ejecting. But if they're close, maybe just a little shout or a little encouragement can get them up to that green and get them
Yeah.
back in play. And the ones that are going a little bit too hot, you can correct that intensity. Maybe at the end you let them go, but early on in a workout, you can help optimize everybody's workout by quickly seeing if they're complying or not, both with power and RPM. So that's first and foremost. You can really help a large group of people quickly.
Mm.
The other element is you can see their position. You know how valuable positions are, right? You know how valuable a person having their elbows out versus in, just from its person drag, having their head up or having their head tucked, right? You can help give feedback to someone whose position is off. And you can see if they're slugging up a hill at 40 RPM and you want them at 70 RPM, shift to an easier gear, Joe. Just take the pressure off your muscles right now. You're not going to last at that low RPM. You're utilizing too much torque. You can also do the other way, right? Your cadence is way too high. Bring that cadence down a little bit inside of that range. So there's a lot you can gather just from seeing people. But what I really want to make a point about is sometimes seeing other athletes also helps you. I always believe that an athlete should look at themselves when they train. That's the one downside outdoors. They can't see themselves.
Mm.
When you can see yourselves, we know how we're supposed to look on the bike, or at least close. Just by having your video camera up and you looking at it yourself, you're going to make better decisions on your overall position. When you see other athletes as well, it gives you ideas on how their position is, and you can make some experiments. I'm always having athletes experiment by moving forward and back in their saddle and realizing how that feels on their legs. You start to put thoughts and ideas in their heads so they can run experiments themselves to feel what's better. Like, I don't tell people this is how you should look when you climb. I say, here's some different positions when you're climbing. What feels best for you and why? Like, what's the difference between doing a 120% of FTP out of your seat, and then when you sit down, where does it feel it? Where do you feel it the most?
Mm.
Some people have such big upper bodies that they really are powerful out of the seat, but once they sit back down, there's so much load on their legs they can't hold it. So they have to shift to an easier gear. Like, those are the types of things that you can watch and see and suggest. And I would say the athletes seeing each other is almost as important as you see in the athletes, because we know for a fact that we can learn as much from a group of people as we can from a coach.
Yeah.
There's just stuff that happens when you train with other people that there's like this learning just from watching and seeing other people do things. So, and there's also a connection that's built amongst the athletes if they can train with other people. So they get their cake and eat it too. We talked about how they want to be by themselves. They have their own environment. They have their own power. They have their own stats. They don't have to worry about going too hard or too easy because they're not going to drop anybody. But yet they can ride and learn and talk with other people. share
Mm.
ideas, and the coach can help facilitate that. That is the secret sauce.
And what are some of when you see riders riding on video, what are some of like the biggest errors that you see that you think, geez, if like if it wasn't for coaching with this platform, I'd never have caught that. You know, what are the really like the really low hanging fruit that you see from riders? You think, geez, man, just you know, just like bring your shoulders in, keep your head up, you know, and anything that you see that you think, oh, that's that you have a really big impact on someone
Um,
just from being able to see them on the video.
Yeah, I think there's some position stuff that you can see right away. Sometimes it's their inability to comply. It's their inability to stay within a tight window
Mm.
when they're riding with power. And you can see that because you can make the window real tight and they just can't make it green. They're either blue or red. They're all over the
Mm.
board. And then the one thing that I see a lot is after an effort, just a pretty sizable effort, let's just say 100% of or 110% of threshold for a couple of minutes, they can't recover at 80%. They go blue. They can't control bringing the
Mm.
power down and keeping it steady slightly below FTP, right? They have to learn that ability. I mean, they can't just all of a sudden have the power drop out, they recover, then boom, they bring the power back up. I call it like skipping the dip. And a lot of times teaching athletes that if they just hang out there, they're going to recover. They don't need to go easy, easy, easy to recover. They can recover at 85%. They just have to teach their brain and their body to,
Mm.
to withstand that first 20 seconds of stress, and then boom, they have it. And it's such an important thing, especially when you come over a hill. Your first reaction is to take the pressure off. No, keep the pressure on, keep the speed up, and naturally your body will come back and start clearing blood lactate. So that's one thing that I see a lot of. The other one is this is a funny story. Some of these athletes train their intensity workouts trying to learn how to manage heat. So they'll wear a big, thick coat and a hat and all this gear, and we start doing high intensity work, and they don't realize the cost of thermoregulation on high
Mm.
intensity. If you're going to work the high intensity energy systems, and that's mostly the classes that I teach, I let them use the overlay and ride, long on their own. But the intensity stuff, I don't want athletes working on heat acclimation or adaptation when you're going hard because you can't get the stress, the physical intensity, power stress, because your body is working so hard to keep itself cool. So I always tell people when you got a long sleeve coat on, a hat on, and long figure gloves, and I'm like, "Are you doing heat stress training?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "No, not today. Do that on your 65% of threshold day. Do that
Yeah.
on your aerobic days, not when we're in here." So I oftentimes have to correct people that that's not something they work on, and they end up having to take off their big thermal coats and their long tights and
I mean,
whatever. People
if we're looking
funny
at
thing.
if we're looking at specificity, even if someone is going to race Kona or they're doing a bike race somewhere in a really hot environment and they live somewhere cool and think, oh, I've got to do all this heat prep. Look, you're not going to be riding at VO2 max in Kona, are you? You know, we're trying to build your the purpose of the session is to build your top end aerobic fitness. As you say, yeah, if you want to do some race pace work with that heat prep, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe there's a place for that. But if you're just doing yourself a
Yeah.
mischief. You're not going to be able to complete a workout which should be challenging just in your shorts and jersey if you're going to be there with a bobbly hat on.
Yep.
Um, yeah, no, that's a good point. So, for those of you who are thinking, you know what, this sounds like it could be interesting. You know, I'm thinking, yeah, I'd like to give this a go. Well, Robbie and I, we're going to be doing a ride together. Okay, it's going to be on the 1st of March, 2025, just in case. Um, 5 p.m. GMT, which is what is that Central Time? Oh, it's
Was
one.
it 11? Oh, one? Okay.
Yeah, because it's 6 hour difference. Yep. So 1 p.m. Central Time for anyone who's listening to this in the States who'd also like to join. So you get a two
Check the
week.
1 o'clock. Just check the 1 o'clock.
Cool. I will. You know, I'll stick all the details of it down in the show notes in case I got it
I
wrong.
think it's
Oh no,
11.
if it's fine, it's going to
I
be
think it's
11
11.
a.m., isn't it?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think so.
there we
But
go.
my math, trust me, my math was never my strong suit.
um, no, so it's getting you 11 a.m. Central Time, 5 p.m. GMT. So you should be able to get it done before you have your dinner. So we're going to be doing a VO2 session that I'm going to be leading, and Robbie's going to be there as well, helping everybody get a bit of an intro to the platform. There is a 2 week free trial to Velocity when you sign up, so you can join us for that session for free, and you can join me for 2 weeks worth of workouts off the back of that as well, for absolutely no cost.
Cool.
Good stuff. So Robbie, before we call it there, is there anything else that you wanted to share? Any other little pearls of wisdom for us?
No, I think I just really believe that um, the human interaction in our sport is necessary. It's necessary not only between athlete and coach, but between athlete and athlete. And I think finding things or people or systems or platforms that allow that to happen, I think is important for us as athletes. I think you don't necessarily even have to know the people very well that you train with to
Mm,
enjoy it, to be motivated by them, to show up because they're showing up. I think when you do something hard, it's always easier to do it with a group of people, and it's always easier to do it with somebody that you trust, that can teach you something, that can bring you up a notch and continue to have you learn. The other element that I think is important in endurance sports is to always be learning and to
mm,
create opportunities for yourself to learn. And I think if you hire a coach, a big part of the responsibility that you guys have to each other is to teach each other things about you, because we as coaches learn
mm,
all the time from our athletes, but also from the athletes to learn from the coach. And not by just reading context from a workout, but to actually interact with the coach. I think there's a lot of AI, there's a lot of things that are coming out that takes care of the heavy lifting of writing training plans and adjusting training plans. But what they can't do is motivate. What they can't do is inspire. What they can't do is
mm.
teach on a regular basis and correct positions, outputs, ideas in workout. And I think that that is going to be the future. I'm excited that we have a platform that is on the cutting edge of that, and hopefully you'll all take advantage of it. And I will promise you, you won't. And the nice thing about it is there's really no risk. Just show up to a workout. I can't wait. Hopefully you all show up on the first, and I can kind of show you a little bit about it. But I also think that competition is important, but I don't think competition centered around output all the time is important. Sometimes around compliance and other
Mm.
things. So I think that a fine balance between having fun with competition, but also learning through the process is mission critical. And hopefully you'll all get to experience that on the first.
Excellent. Yeah, because you do have some, I can set an interval, try and hold your cadence and your power in this range, and I believe at the end of it we can see a little leaderboard of those who have the highest compliance, and that's a nice way because you don't necessarily have to be the most powerful rider. If you can be the most efficient rider, you may well end up outracing those who have a
Yep.
higher FTP, a higher power to weight ratio than you, because you learn to ride a bike effectively.
Yep.
Excellent,
People with
Robbie.
the big power outputs, the people with the big power outputs always get the pats on the back. We don't, I mean,
Yeah.
they're fine, right? Let's give everybody else that really optimizes their speed a little pat on the back, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And you said it best, right? It's not about who has the most power, who goes the fastest.
Excellent. Well, Robbie, hopefully the listeners will be joining us on the 1st for the workout that we're doing together. If you're listening to this after the 1st of March, I will include a link down in the show notes as well to my Velocity sign up link where you can still redeem that 2 week free trial and do 2 weeks of free workouts with me. Yeah, hopefully we can get a lot of people, build a little bit of community and we can get people riding faster for less effort.
Thanks, Simon.
Excellent. Thanks again, Robbie. Really appreciate the time. Enjoy the rest of your day. If you're looking to join us for this ride on the 1st, which I really hope you do, you can find all of the instructions down in the show notes, where you'll also be able to download a free copy of an ebook that I've written that will talk you all about bike setup. So, tyre choice, wheel choice, tyre pressure, aero bars, all of that. It's all covered in that ebook. So hopefully you get a little bit of lifetime value in there as well. Great. Well, thanks again for your company this week. I really hope to see you joining us on that ride on the 1st of March.